lived in the United States of America since I was 2 years old, and I am still going through my immigration status. For some people, it is nearly impossible to gain your immigration status because there is no pathway. I remember being devastated, and I remember crying to my mom and my friend and just wondering, like, what am I supposed to do with my life? How am I supposed to work? I can't go to college. I couldn't do anything here. So I just felt like really down. I didn't know what was going to happen to my life. I felt like I was going to be nobody. I don't know, it might be cliche or something, but if I were in Mexico and my children were starving and my kids were unsafe, I don't know, would you wait 25 years to come to a country where you could feed your kids and your kids would be safe? Or would you cross that border? That's what a lot of people face, And so that was the first time that I got to see my culture and what they represented and the resilience in my people. And it made me so proud to be Mexican. You are friends with the immigrant, and more likely maybe your child is friends with the immigrant. Somebody you know and care about, I'm pretty sure cares about an immigrant. So just get to know them. I'm working on that too. Just both ways, try to understand each other.
Thank you for joining us for Echoes from the Edge, Voices on the Margin, a special series focused on the actual lived experiences of immigrants in the northern Arizona region and the individuals that help them navigate the legal process to documented status. Some individuals have chosen to remain anonymous to feel more comfortable in sharing their experience.
In today's episode, we are joined by an individual that moved to Flagstaff, Arizona as a young child as her mother attempted to escape threats to the family. Listen in as she describes her early life connections to Flagstaff, her struggles with identity, including her immigrant history, the complexities in considering educational and career options, and the difficulties she and her family have faced in maneuvering the legal process in seeking documented status.
She references her family throughout the episode, including her brother, and his name has been removed to protect their identity. Of note, this individual makes reference to suicide in the latter half of the episode. You can contact the National Suicide Hotline at 1-800-273-8255 if you or someone you love is experiencing thoughts of suicide. Thank you for joining us. All right, well, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you. We wondered if you would start out by telling us a little bit what it was like growing up predominantly here in Flagstaff.
So I came to Flagstaff, I want to say when I was maybe 3 or 4. I was born in Mexico, and my mom, she never really was in her plans to move to the United States of America, but at some point shortly after my brother was born, something happened with my dad it made it unsafe for her to stay in Mexico. She actually was kidnapped when she was in Mexico, and she had my brother with her when they kidnapped her. And after she was released, my grandpa forced her to come to the United States of America for her safety. And my mom loved Mexico. She was a teacher there. She was always really proud of being one of her only siblings that graduated university in Mexico and was able to get a teaching degree. And from what I've heard, she loved teaching and she was a great teacher. One of my oldest cousins has a good memory of visiting Mexico while my mom was still there and helping her in her classroom. And she holds that memory really dear. But after she was kidnapped, for her safety, she brought my brother and I here, where we were in California for shortly, I think a year, maybe a little over a year. And then she had a brother in Williams, who we then went to Williams. But my mom struggled there with the community, so shortly after she moved to Flagstaff, where she made her home. She felt welcomed here and felt like it would be safe for us to stay here. So we've lived in Flagstaff ever since then. I had 2 other brothers after my mom moved here. So she was a single mom with 4 kids in a country where she did not know the language. And I can only imagine how hard that was for her. But she made things happen. And luckily to her, we were able to be successful and go to school and grow up here. And for a while, we lived on the west side of town, so I got to attend South Beaver when I was in second grade. And then we moved to the east side of town, where we've lived all of our lives. And I went to Killup with Mr. G, who's actually still a principal there. Then we also I went to MIMS, and then I also went to New Start. And around junior high is when I moved to Yuma, where I lived with my uncle and his family. And I graduated from high school down in Yuma and then moved back here shortly after.
What brought you back to Flagstaff?
My family.
Yeah.
I, as a young adult, struggled in Flagstaff, so I moved to Yuma just to better myself, which I did. And but I miss my mom a lot and my brothers. So every like spring break, summer, I would come back home and I would spend my vacation with them, and then I'd go back to Yuma. But after I graduated Yuma, I decided I wanted to come back home and live with my mom and my brothers, just because growing up, my mom raised us to be really close to each other. We were always all we had. Like, it was always my mom and my brothers and I.
And then you were on the west side and then to the east side, so Killup is mostly where you spent your elementary years.
Yeah.
What was it like going to school there?
I loved Killup. It was fun. I think as a kid, you never really think about it. You know, you just go to school and hang out with your friends, and some days you're like, oh, I hate school, but then you realize those are actually the golden years and to cherish them for the rest of your life. But as a young kid, I liked school. I enjoyed it. I had lots of friends. We were really close to people around us. As I got older, I think I started to realize that I was different, that I was undocumented, and I didn't really know what that meant, except for that I couldn't go to Mexico, and my cousins got to go to Mexico to visit my grandma and grandpa. And I couldn't really go to Yuma a lot because there was a border patrol there. So we couldn't, like, for Christmas, when my family from Williams would go down to Yuma, we would never go. We'd always stay in Flagstaff. And I would see my mom. She would get really sad because she just wanted to be around her family. Sometimes she would get, like, not hurt, but she just felt like a burden. Because she was never able to go there, and the rent. I remember one time getting on the Greyhound and going down to Yuma because my auntie was having a baby shower. My cousin Edie was about to be born, and I just remember how excited she was because she was going to get to see her sisters and all her brothers. And I think I was probably around 6 years old when we did that trip, maybe a little older, no more than 10. But that was the one and only time I actually remember my mom being able to visit her family. And I just remember how happy she was. We knew that we couldn't go there often, and we weren't allowed to go to Mexico because we couldn't come back. I didn't really understand why, except for that we just couldn't.
So felt limited spending time with family, but school was a good memory. You have good advice for all the kids out there. Enjoy the golden years.
Yes, enjoy school. Stay in school. Go to school.
Yeah, go to school.
Yeah, you'll want to go back once you're done. Yeah.
What were the fond memories? What do you remember about Killup that were the good days, not the days that you're like, school sucks?
I remember we'd have school dances. Like, I remember Camp Colton. That was one of my favorites, I think. Mr. Turner, Bulldog. That was my teacher. He was my 6th grade teacher.
Bulldog?
Yeah, that was his nickname. He was also a coach at Coconino. He's really popular in our community. I was really proud to get him as a 6th grade teacher because he was like one of the cool ones. He kind of had a serious side, but I never really saw that in him. Yeah, so I loved 6th grade. I loved going to Camp Colton. That was a good experience I had, especially because I never got to go camping before. That was like, I think, the 2nd or 3rd time I ever had gone camping before. And it was my first time going without any of my family. So I was a little nervous, but I really enjoyed it. I also remember a program called Home Start. It was a program that Killup had after school, and we went there after school to do our homework. They would give us dinner, and then we'd do like fun field trips every like 3 months or every 6 months, we'd go on a on a field trip all together, all the kids that were part of Homestart. And at the very end of the year, I remember we'd do a camping trip, and they're the other ones that I got to go camping with. But my brothers always went with me there because we all went to that program together. I want to say the teacher's name was like Miss, I don't know, it started with the P, but I remember her. I just don't remember her name. But she lived in Flagstaff too, and I have a memory of one time going to her house. Like, she took all the kids. It was like a field trip, and we got to go to her house for a little bit, and she gave us hot chocolate with marshmallows in there. I remember her. She was really nice and supportive. I loved Homestart too. It was a good program, and you got to hang out with friends after school and do your homework, and then you just went home after that.
Hot chocolate with marshmallows.
Yeah, not
Those are
too
good
bad.
memories.
Not too bad. You mentioned that Camp Colton was your first time going camping. I'm just curious what that experience was like for you, how it landed with you.
Yeah, it wasn't like my first time I went camping was actually with Homestart, but my first time going camping with just myself without my brothers was for 6th grade, and it was at Camp Colton, and it was exciting. I was a little nervous at first just because I had never been away from, that was my first time being away from my mom for a whole week, but I really enjoyed it, and again, I liked the dance that they did at the very end, and then I also enjoyed, we would all hang out a couple times in the evening around the fire pit, and we'd call out to the deers or the wolves, and then they actually respond to you. Like, if you're very quiet, they'll respond back to you. And being from Flagstaff, I thought it was really cool too because 3 of my children got to go to Camp Cohen. The first one was not able to because it was during COVID. And then when she got given the option again, she was nervous going by herself too. But my other 2 got to go, and I thought it was really cool just being like, oh, I've been there. I knew that. That was something growing up, I would see other families at school say, oh, my mom knows that teacher, or, oh, my mom went to this school, or, and I never had that growing up. But now my kids, they're like, oh, yeah, my uncles all went to that school. My mom went to that school. And I got to tell them about going to Camp Cohen too, and how I enjoyed it and what my favorite parts were.
Yeah, like a network, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. That's neat to hear that you would call out to the deers and the wolves and they'd respond to you.
Yeah, it's a cool program.
Yeah.
What kinds of things would you do daily for fun? And even into middle school, high school, what kinds of things did you do for fun?
I just like to hang out with my friends a lot as well. In elementary, I would just go to school. I'd do the after school program and then just basically go home and hang out with my family. I remember we used to like the Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, all those fun shows. And then just basically hang out at home. As I got older, I did hang out more with my friends, just do normal teenage things that I guess kind of got me in some sticky situations. And I later on realized that probably wouldn't be the best choice for me. I was always consistently reminded that I was undocumented. Every time I made a bad choice, every time I got some sort of constructed feedback that I should do better, it was always because I was undocumented. So you have no papers, you have to be good, you can't do that, you have to follow every rule because you're not like your friends. If you do that, you're going to go to jail, you're going to get deported. My whole life, ever since I was in junior high, all my aunts, my mom would always tell me I couldn't do things because it would result in my deportation. So I was but why? Why am I so different? I don't understand. I lived here my whole life.
Yeah, you alluded to this earlier, it really inhibited your mom's ability to spend time with extended family.
Yeah. That really hurt her. I know sometimes she would even argue with my aunts and uncles about how they didn't care about her, why they wouldn't come see her. But they also were working, and all my family worked in the fields in Yuma. So it's not like they come for money or anything. They all migrated here. They were all able to gain residency because they were all here before my mom. They came, I don't know what year it was that America did a really big amnestia. I think that's what it's called.
Amnesty, yeah.
Yeah, amnesty. Mm-hmm. So that's how a lot of my aunts and uncles were able to gain their paperwork. And they all worked in the fields until just recently. And they were all in Yuma except for one brother here in Williams. So my mom just kind of felt left out, and she was the younger sister. So she, it would hurt her a lot not to be able to be with her sisters or my nana or my tata. Like when they'd come and visit, they'd always go to Yuma because that's where the majority of them were. And then they'd come and spend maybe like 2 months in Flagstaff, like maybe once or twice a year. So I know that was really hard for her. And when my nana passed, my mom couldn't be with her. She couldn't go to her funeral, and we weren't able to say goodbye to her. When my grandpa passed, the same. My mom wasn't able to go say bye to him. She wasn't at his funeral, and she always said that she felt like they were still here because she could never say goodbye to them.
Yeah, so you'd kind of observe that pain, but you also mentioned you became aware that you used the word different a little bit ago.
Yeah.
Tell me about that process of becoming aware that your immigration status had an impact on decisions you would make or the way that you would face consequences. That would be part of the dialogue. How did you become aware of that? And then how did it influence the way you approach things like school or friendships or other things?
We always hung out with mostly Mexican Americans, which are Chicanos. And sometimes we can be racist within our own culture. And I know a lot of people don't like to talk about how hard sometimes Mexican Americans are on Mexicans that come from Mexico and how they look down on them and they feel like they are better than them. So growing up with Chicanos, I heard the word wetback a lot. I heard, oh, they're wetbacks. They're wetbacks. So growing up, I remember I had a friend and I was like, I said it proudly though. I was like, we're wetbacks. And then she, I don't think, understood what that word meant. And she was like, yeah, we are wetbacks. And we were like, I think 12 years old. And we were like, yeah, we're wetbacks. We're proud of it. Her mom came outside and she was like, you are not a wetback. She told my friend that. She's like, don't ever say that. She's like, you were born here. She's like, you're not a wetback. She's like, she is. You're not. And then that's when I was like, I don't know, it kind of took me by shock because I saw that word as degrading. And then I realized that, oh, they're actually talking down on them, And then I started to lie that I was not from Mexico because I wanted to fit in with this group of people. And I saw how they would talk about kids that didn't speak Spanish or English, so correctly, or that were from Mexico. They kind of were left out or looked down upon. So me and my brother, we made up a story that we were born in America. And I would lie and I denied being from Mexico when I was a young kid until I was like 14. Until I moved to Yuma, I denied being from Mexico. I said I was born in New York. I don't know why I chose New York, but I said I was born in New York, and my brother would say he was born in Phoenix. Like he was more logical with his answers. I was like, I'm in New York. Yeah. So
Go big.
Go big, yeah.
Yeah, and we would say that to our friends. Like a lot of people that we grew up with did not know we were actually from Mexico.
There was a point at which, around 12, you become aware of yourself and you realize there's this hierarchy, and maybe even specific within the Latino community, so Chicano to Mexican-born. And so in that hierarchy, obviously, that's a developmental stage of life where people are looking to fit in. They're trying to find friendships. They obviously want peer connection. And so to achieve that, you would say you were born in New York.
Yeah.
The Big Apple.
The Big Apple.
Yeah. I even tried to lie to my auntie one time, and she just was like, no, you are not born in New York. And she's like, you don't even have a New York accent. And I tried to make one up.
That you picked up as a baby.
Yeah.
Between when you were born in New York and your brother was born in Phoenix, so in that short span that you were in New York, you had an accent.
Yeah.
Picked up that New York accent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm struck from an identity piece, what first felt very prideful, very proud of it. Seemed like you almost had to turn away from that to sort of fit in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know, just hearing you describe that, it seemed like there was a lot of, I don't know, the reality of that and the pain associated with that. At 14, you mentioned making contact with that identity again, feeling proud of that. Yeah.
When I moved to Yuma, there's a lot more Hispanic culture down there. I felt like I could fit in better. And I met so many people that were born from Mexico, but had paperwork, and they weren't afraid, and they were like, no, I was born in Mexico. Some were born in Yuma. My cousins were born in California. Like, they were from all over, but they all were like, we're Mexican. Like, no, even if they were from California or Yuma, like, they were like, no, we're from Mexican. We're Mexican. We're born in Mexico. Like, they would lie and say they were born in Mexico. And my aunties would be like, no, you were born in California. Like, yeah. And so that was the first time that I got to see my culture and what they represented and the resilience in my people. And it made me so proud to be Mexican. I remember growing up, we had a friend who lived with us. She had a hard at-home life, so my mom took her in and practically raised her like as one of her daughters. And I remember moving back, I was not moved back yet, but I was visiting from Yuma, and we were eating at China Star, and out of nowhere, she's all, why did you lie and say you were born in Mexico? And I just like didn't even know how to respond to her. Like all my brothers were there, and then I was like, I didn't know what to say, and then she was like, I'm sorry that we would make fun of you, and she was like, I know why you lied. She's like, we would always say wetback and like all this stuff. She's like, and she was just like, I'm sorry, and I was like, yeah, I was born in Mexico.
Yeah, what was it like to hear that?
I think I was in shock at first. I was like, oh my God, she's going to tell everybody I was born in Mexico and I'm not going to have any friends here anymore. I think that was the first time of actually realizing that, like, it doesn't really matter where you're born. Like, people that are going to care for you and be there for you, they're going to see the real you. And honestly, where you're born has nothing to do with the type of person you are. It's just like the place you happen to be born at. Yeah, but it has nothing to do with the character you are and who you will be and like who you become.
I'm really struck by in Flagstaff, it was almost, having been born in Mexico, it was almost something that you had to deny. That was like looked down upon. Going to Yuma, it was like celebrated. Mm-hmm. And it was almost reverse. Like people who were born here were saying they were born in Mexico. And I wonder what that was like for you, that transition.
It was different. It was, I think for the first time I realized that, or I for the first time I was proud to be Mexican, and to actually be from Mexico. And now as an adult, I make sure everybody knows I'm born in Mexico, Sonora. And it's kind of funny because now seeing my daughter, I remember like a few years ago, she bought a shirt that said made in Mexico. And I just wanted her to make sure. I was like, you're not born in Mexico. And she was like, yes, Mom. And I was like, okay. And then I remember talking to my cousin. I was like, I think it's really cool watching my daughter wear shirts that says she's from Mexico, because when I was her age, I tried so hard to hide that.
What's that like for you to watch with your daughter, to see that change?
Yeah. It makes me proud. Yeah. Like, my children are very proud to be Mexican American. I just see her grow and I see her confidence. And as a Mexican, it makes me proud for her to be proud of her roots and be proud of where she comes from. And I want to keep the memory of my mom alive. And that helps, Yeah. We're working on our Spanish, but yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a couple of things that I think it conveys, this anecdote that you share. One is that the environment we're in can have an influence on how we see ourselves or what we want others to see in ourselves. So that in Flagstaff, part of that identity was, embarrassing, or you wanted to change. And then in Yuma, that was something that you could be proud of. So it's interesting the way that the environment has an influence on the way that we think about ourselves or the way we want others to think of us.
Yeah.
But the other thing is I think, wow, adolescence is so complicated and difficult to go through anyways. To have the added stressor of worrying about your birthplace somehow being an indicator for your worth or your value or fear of that feels like an added complexity.
Yeah.
So it made me wonder, like, in what ways did your immigration status influence things like that just happen for most people, like going to school? How did it influence educational opportunities or job opportunities, career experiences, things like that?
Well, in Yuma, even though I was closer to the border and I did feel more at home, it still affected me because everyone there had their documentation, so even though they were from Mexico or whatever, they were all had their documentation. So when it came to talking about college, or I remember this one particular time I was in math class and our counselor came in and he was like, hey, so, we're going to start talking about college, start looking at like schools you want to attend, your grades. And luckily in Yuma, I don't know if it was the environment you're talking about, but I did amazing in school, which was something that I didn't do here in Flagstaff. I was able to be on the honor roll. I had all A's and B's. I remember my uncle just being so proud of me. When my report card would come in, and he would be honored about me. He'd be like, look, she's got all A, B's, and C's, In Flagstaff, I was like a CD student. I went to New Start. But in Yuma, I definitely blossomed. But when college came up, I knew I couldn't go to college. I knew it wasn't an opportunity for me at that time. It was before DACA had happened. So it just wasn't something that I could look forward to. So I again went back to my ways and I was like, oh, I don't want to go to college. I just because I didn't want my friends to wonder, like, why don't you want to go to college, or like, why aren't you pursuing these things? Like, why don't you want to do school? And I was like, oh, I'm just going to go straight to work. But deep down, I think I did want to go to college. I did want to continue my school, but knowing that wasn't an option for me, I didn't dwell on it. I was like, okay, like that's not for me, so I'm going to go to work. But you actually need documentation to go to work too, which I found out when I graduated high school. I got a job at Claire's, and I loved my job there. I loved my management team. The way I got that job was I had just graduated from high school. And one of my uncles, he knew that I was trying to find work and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. So he gave me a number and he said, you need this number so you can work. It had my name on it. It had all my information on it. I didn't really understand. Now I understand it was a fake social security. But it had my name. It said my name on the card. It had a number. He said, this is what you'll show. And I even showed it to the people I worked with, So I was able to get a job. I was working at Claire's for like a year, maybe a little over a year. I really liked my job. And one day I got a call from my boss there, and she was like, do not come to work today. There is a detective looking for you. I don't know why, but just don't come to work today. And I got really scared. I didn't know why he was looking for me or what had happened because she didn't give me much details or anything. So at that point, I reached out to the detective and I was like, hi, like, this is my name. I was told you were looking for me. Like, why? And in a really scary, aggressive voice, he was like, you have to come to the police department. We have some charges that we need to talk to you about. And he wouldn't really give me more detail. He just said I had to go there. And I was like, well, I'm not going to go over there. He's like, I told him, I was like, because you're scaring me and I don't know why you want me to go over there. I didn't do anything wrong. And then he was like, well, if you don't come over here, I'm going to come find you. So then that scared me even more. So then we called a family friend that my mom had who was always helping us and just like really helpful to my mom. Her name is Helen Hill. And she went with me to the police station because my mom being undocumented, she couldn't go with me. And she went with me. We explained to the officer what had happened. He let me know that there had been a fraud charge filed for me because I was using a fake social security. And at first I didn't understand what he meant. And then he showed me the card. He's like, is this your card? And I was like, yeah. And then he was like, why do you have this? And then I kind of went into detail with him. I was like, well, I just graduated from high school. I was like, I couldn't go to college. I couldn't work. So my uncle gave me this and he said I could work with this. So I went to work. And then I was like, I'm just working. And then it had my name. I used my birthday. I used all my information except for that card number. That's how they found me. I think the detectives were in shock and they didn't really know what to do. And they themselves didn't understand. So they just let me go home. They were like, okay, well, we will be in contact with you. Go ahead. Like, you can go home. So then I was allowed to go home. And then I had to go to like a court process with them. And luckily, the public defender that I got, they knew my situation too. And I remember him saying how he was going to plea this down. So when I was able to, and I got older and I was able to fix my paper status, this wouldn't affect my case. He did. He was able to drop the case, and they were very understanding of my situation. And I wrote an apology letter, and I paid a restitution fee, and that case was dismissed.
What did that mean for work moving forward?
So I lost my job at Claire's. My manager apologized and let me know that as soon as I get my paperwork that they would welcome me back with open arms, and that they were really, really sorry, but I unfortunately couldn't stop working there. I remember being devastated, and I remember crying to my mom and my friend and the late Helen who went with me, and just wondering, like, what am I supposed to do with my life? How am I supposed to work? I can't go to college. I couldn't do anything here. Like, what am I supposed to do? I didn't even have a driver's license at that time because I couldn't get a driver's license. I didn't have an ID. I didn't have anything, like, at all. So I just felt, like, really down. I didn't know what was going to happen to my life. Like, I felt like I was going to be nobody.
How did it unfold from there?
Now I have a work permit. At that time, I did not have a work permit. So you basically take the jobs that you can. In some of these jobs, I would assume you pay into Social Security, so you have to pay taxes. Like, the money you earn goes towards things like Social Security and taxes, and yet you don't get to reap those same benefits that you're paying into.
Yeah, we taxes are always taken out of your check, and until I was never able to file taxes until after I got married. My mom was never able to file taxes, so she would always just work and work and work, and taxes would be taken out of her check, and she wasn't able to file for her tax return. And that's what happens to a lot of undocumented people. They work and they don't, and yeah, every time you work, you can look on your pay stub, it takes taxes out of your paycheck, and it does the same to undocumented people. So they don't get to file back for those taxes. And that's still the case for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned your brother having a dream of going to college. So how did it play out for him? How did education or career play out for him with him having the same immigration status?
My brother, he was always great at school. He was always really involved in our community. And he did everything he possibly could to try to find a way to fix his immigration status so he could attend college. At some point, he did a semester of college, but he paid out of pocket for that semester, which is out-of-state tuition. He also was always working. He enjoyed doing, he did hospice work, and he liked working with the elderly. So he did that for a long time with my mom. They kind of worked together, and they found a lady who had local homes for elderly people, and she knew their situation, and luckily she still employed them. And so it made it easy for him to be able to work and help my mom out. Shortly after they had to leave that job, because when you're undocumented, you can only stay at jobs for so long until they either realize your documentation status and then you get fired, or that's basically what happens. You have to leave because your documentation status or something changes. Like my brother, I believe he got a promotion. And so when he received that promotion, they looked into his documentation status deeper, and that's when he had to leave that job. But he was never able to actually get a college degree, and he wasn't able to really pursue his college dream, except for that one semester he was able to go to, but then it just was way too expensive. And my mom struggled a lot with her medical health, and also being undocumented, she didn't have insurance, and she's not able to apply for Medicare access or any of that. So all of her medical bills we had to pay out of pocket, which my brother, until he passed away, took upon himself since he was like 13 years old. My brother started working at 13 years old at Carl's Jr. And we lived on this east side of town. And I remember my mom like telling me when I'd call from Yuma that, oh, your brother's working. And he would walk from like the east side of town all the way to Carl's Jr. and then walk home at like midnight. And that's how he would help my mom, like with house bills, medical bills. He even helped send money to me while I was in Yuma going to school. Thanks to him, I was able to go to high school. I have a kind of normal childhood.
So he kind of took on a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
Did that have an impact on him? Or?
Yeah, he struggled in education, not because he wasn't smart, because anybody that knew my brother and was his teacher, like, he got offered scholarship opportunities, but he couldn't take them because of his Social Security issue. But he ended up leaving Sanawa High School and graduating from Ponderosa High School because of his attendance. He would work like all night, and then he wouldn't make it to school on time, or he'd be absent at school. So the easiest way for him to be able to work and help provide for our family and still get a high school diploma was to go to Ponderosa, because they were able to work with his schedule, and he was able to make up credits, and he did. He graduated from Ponderosa High School. Yeah, and that's when he wanted to continue his education and go to college, and he did everything he possibly could to find a way to fix his immigration status, to the point where he started working with the attorney who told him that she would work on his immigration case if he would help her with clients when it would come to like interpreting or just gaining more clients here in Flagstaff. She ended up ruining my brother's immigration case. He was never able to get a work permit, a school permit, like anything, go to school, and she never did anything for him. So he was never able to gain any immigration status. I once heard our old mayor say that if she ever saw a system destroy a person, it was my brother, because the system destroyed my brother.
What did she mean by that?
Because my brother was always really involved from a very young age. He was part of Weed and Seed. We were all part of the Weed and Seed program here in Flagstaff, but he continued with that. He helped city councils get elected. He was part of advocating for our community from a very young age. He would advocate for my mom, for myself. He was always involved in like city council meetings. He helped, like I said, a lot of city council members and even other council, like, I don't know, like I call him his important friends, like other important people reach certain goals. And he was always just helping our community and willing to go above and beyond for a lot of people. But when it came to helping him, there was nothing nobody could really do or chose not to do because his immigration status. My brother eventually, after everything he went through, he got sick and he became an addict. My brother never did drugs his whole entire life. He wouldn't even smoke marijuana. Like, he wouldn't smoke cigarette. He wouldn't drink a beer. Like, he was always very conservative and like just about school and just bettering his life. When he was shortly before he got deported, like 3 years before he got deported, our family went through a really hard situation with one of my younger brothers. We were needing money for an attorney. My younger brother was facing some pretty serious charges, which after we were able to get him a really good attorney and we went through the court process, he was found not guilty of every single charge. But he was having to wait there for 17 months, and my brother was really worried and scared for his future, for my younger brother's future, and what was going to happen to him. Again, he was like almost like a dad to us, especially for my younger brothers because he was older than them. So he was really concerned about what was going to happen to my brother and like how to get him the legal help that he needed and to help him. And I think he got himself involved in a situation that he didn't know how to get himself out of, because we as family didn't even realize what was happening until it was too late, until after my other brother came home. Then we realized what was happening with him. I think we were all just caught up in my other brother's case and just what was going on with him and just trying to help him, that we lost in the process. And by the time we realized it was too late, my brother became addicted to heroin. Because of his documentation status, he wasn't able to really check himself into rehab. He wasn't really able to gain medical help to help him with that sickness. I remember him telling me like, oh, I'm going to go turn myself in, or I'm going to go put myself in this rehab. But then they would ask for insurance. They would ask for his documentation, his social security number, all this stuff. And I remember there was a couple times where he actually got asked to leave because he didn't have any insurance or anything. So I feel like that was almost like a hit to him every single time that he tried to quit too.
So you describe him as this person that continuously invested into a system, and that system could be the family, it could be the community, it could be the school that he was invested in, and he would put in all that energy and effort, and he wouldn't get much return from that.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it took such a large toll. He ended up in addiction, and again, the system, something like healthcare, basic healthcare needs, he couldn't get access to.
And that ended up in his deportation.
And so is that where things ended for your brother? Or?
He was in Mexico for, I want to say maybe a month, a little over a month, and he committed suicide.
Were you in touch with him at that point for that month?
Yeah, we were always talking to him, and we were trying to give him hope and let him know things were going to be okay. Unfortunately, I told him, last time I spoke to my brother, I told him he was going to have to stay in Mexico for at least like 5 years or so. That right now there wasn't really a pathway for him to come home, and that he would have to stay there until we could figure things out, or things changed. And I told him that when I filed my taxes, I would send him money so he could go to school there, because that was always his dream. And I was like, well, now you can go to school and you can try to gain an education there. But he was always he was like, I can't imagine not seeing your kids grow up. He was really close to my kids. He was like a co-parent with me. And he just said that he's like, I can't imagine not seeing your kids. I can't imagine not seeing my daughter. And he couldn't imagine being without my mom. It was like, how am I like not going to see mom ever? Who's going to help my mom with the doctors? Who's going to go with my mom to see the doctors? Who's going to help my mom? Like, he was always talking about my mom and like, who was going to help her? Who was going to do this for her? Who's going to give her rides? And he couldn't see a life without his family. And he had no one in Mexico. He was able to stay with some of my mom's cousins who we have never met in our entire lives. So he moved and he got his own little apartment, and with the money that was raised, there was money that was raised within our community to help with legal fees. But since it didn't go towards legal fees to help him stay here, it went towards him when he moved and got deported. So he was able to get an apartment and start a job. Like, I remember he was working for a pretty good company that actually had ties to the United States of America. So I was like, well, maybe in a few years, you can somehow try to come back through your job. But I don't know, he'd have good days and bad days. Like, some days he would be like, oh, I like my job, I'm making friends. He was very fit, like very about working out. He was like, he's the most fit brother of mine. And he's like, I went to the gym today. And then he got to go to like a couple parties. But I don't know, he kept going back. And then some days he would be really homesick, where he just wanted to come home, and he really didn't want to go to work at all. And he didn't feel comfortable going to like my mom's cousin's house. And yeah, he'd just go back and forth. And then it got really bad. Like when he was almost there for a month, he was like calling every day, just saying he wanted to come home. He was going to try to find a coyote to come home. But I was like, I didn't want him to come home in the coyote, because I was like, I didn't know what would happen to him in the desert. And like, I've never known anybody who's actually done that before. And we didn't even have the money to pay for a coyote for him to come. So I just tried to help him see a life down there.
It makes me wonder, sometimes people are like, well, people that are undocumented should just get documentation. So yeah, I'd wonder if you'd describe a bit about what it's like to actually try and get documented status.
I have lived in the United States of America since I was 2 years old, and I am still going through my immigration status. For some people, it is nearly impossible to gain your immigration status because there is no pathway. Even DACA, you have to be like a certain age, I think, to get DACA. Like, you can't be over 32 or 33 to get DACA. So when people say that, it's really frustrating to me. It's plain ignorance of that person, because you could tell that they never had a loved one or anyone immigrate into this country, because from my experience, it's really hard. I started my immigration process when I was married to my ex-husband, and my immigration process started because ICE had put a hold on me. I was married to a U.S. citizen. I had just had a daughter. She was 3 months old. So they released me and I just had to go and check in every now and then. And I was in like removal proceedings. But even though I was married to a U.S. citizen, I was never able to obtain my residency card or citizenship at all. All I got was a work permit. I was told, I remember when actually I had an ICE hold put on me when I was like 16, my whole family wanted, because at that time, the law said if you were married to a U.S. citizen, you would have to go back to Mexico for around 6 months to a year in order to gain your residency card. And then after that time, it could take anywhere between that time, you would get a call and you would get your residency card and then you can come back. Or you could just wait in the United States of America, which would take longer for you to get your residency card, but you would eventually get it. At that time, I was really in love with my ex-husband. In my eyes, I was going to be married for the rest of my life, so I wasn't really in a rush to get my green card. And I was terrified to go to Mexico with my 3-month-old because I had never been in Mexico in my entire life. So I chose, against my family's will, to stay in the United States of America and to just wait for my green card to come. Unfortunately, I was in a very unhealthy marriage. So I had to make a decision whether to just stay in my unhealthy marriage and get my green card, or say fuck my immigration and be happy with my children. And I chose to be happy with my children. So I lost my work permit. At that time, I had been working as a store manager at Maurice's, which I started there as a sales associate, and I was able to grow, and eventually I was the store manager there. Due to my work permit expiring, I lost my job again at Maurice's. They did what they could, and they waited as long as they could, but eventually the lawyers got involved, and I had to go. So I lost that job. That time, it was harder than when I lost my job at Claire's, because I actually had 3 kids at that time. I had just had my son, and he was only like 5 months old. Everything was just going on with my brothers, and it was a really hard time for me. Did not want to repeat another cycle, so I chose to just be with me and my kids. And then I started working at hotels. And I started cleaning rooms, and that's how I made my living until I got connected with Keeping Flagstaff Together, which is known as Nails. And I was able to meet a beautiful, great lady named Rowe, who is my attorney, and she's also done my case pro bono. And thanks to her, I was able to obtain a work permit, and I was able to go back to work. And I've been able to work since then, but it was definitely hard, and it was a very ugly time in my life. I didn't know what I was going to do and how I was going to support my family.
Yeah, my understanding is they're working on cases that are like 25 years, like the early 2000s are the cases they're currently working on.
Yeah.
Which means it takes 25 years, or I imagine that time frame only expanding if nothing changes with either access to services or resources for people to move applications through quicker.
I don't know, it might be cliche or something, but if I were in Mexico and my children were starving and my kids were unsafe, I don't know, would you wait 25 years to come to a country where you know you could feed your kids and your kids would be safe? Or would you cross that border? That's what a lot of people face, you know?
Yeah, I'm struck by, again, just how, when you were saying I've been here since I was 2, and a statement such as, well, why don't people just get their papers or become documented, speaks to a process that is sounds long, arduous, both in your story and your brother's story. That's two of several, many, just to how difficult that process is. And then to hear you mention, a lot of people, so many people face this question or this dilemma, I guess it would be called.
Yeah. And it's a very expensive, like financially, to start your documentation. It's insane. I don't know what they said at the meeting we were at. It's like $25,000 or something.
$25,000 to $26,000.
Yeah, because each application has a fee. So like I have a stack like this of work permit cards because you have to renew them like every 6 months, every year. And each one of those costs $400. Yeah, so you have to, and those are just your work permit fees. There's a fee for your green card application. There's a fee for your citizen application. There's fees for every application you're applying for.
Just hearing this 26K just for the process, like that just seems, odds are so stacked against anybody to make it through that.
Yeah, and again, we're still trying to survive.
Yeah.
And feed our families and have a home and just do like the basic necessity things that life requires.
Yeah.
That's the thing. If you don't mind, like I'd like to bring it back to that. I think that's the thing that stuck out to me about learning more about what it was like to grow up here was adolescence or going through phases of life is so difficult as it is. And to make added complexities, sometimes not by the choice of the individual, like if they're brought here by a parent or if they're brought here or if they come here due to circumstances that are pretty much out of their control, it adds stressors to a world and an existence that's already difficult to begin with. And some of those stressors are pretty unbelievable, like waiting around for that amount of time or expected to pay that amount of money or not being able to see your family. Those are pretty drastically difficult things.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice or feedback for how others can be supportive or helpful? So how can individuals be allies for those that have to face difficulties or stressors because of immigration status?
Immigration law is very different than other laws. So I would, like, if there's any other attorneys out there that are willing to do pro bono cases or even just help, I feel like that would be very helpful in our community. I know right now, I believe Nails doesn't have an actual attorney that is able to look at these cases. So if there are attorneys out there that are willing to do pro bono cases or even just help, I know that we can try to organize some sort of training if they're like nervous about not knowing the immigration law or sorts of that. I know there's people willing to help with that situation. So that would be very helpful if any attorneys could come forward and just give their advice or their help. Also, just feeling support from our community. Recently there was a march done in Flagstaff where I want to say 300 people showed up. And that was really nice to see that we are wanted in this community. We are valued here, and we do contribute very highly to Flagstaff. You hear very ugly things about immigrants, so just being able to see people that actually do support us and do want us and being vocal about that, especially if you can be vocal about it. I think that always helps to make sure you're standing up for your community members, because we don't all have a voice. And even the ones that are speaking up, this is very new to us, and it can be scary sometimes. And yeah, just coming together, as a community and just trying to get to know each other, even if you have different views about immigration. If you believe that we are criminals or we shouldn't be here, get to know an immigrant, get to know your neighbor. Like I don't know, I'll go to coffee with you. Get to know your community, get to know who we actually are, because more likely you are friends with the immigrant, and more likely maybe your child is friends with the immigrant. Somebody you know and care about, I'm pretty sure cares about an immigrant. So just get to know them. I'm working on that too, just both ways, try to understand each other and talk to each other and get to know your neighbors, because I feel like maybe if we talk with one another, we'll understand that we're actually more alike than different.
just to restate those, so it's like if there's anyone that does legal work, if they can reach out, and here in Flagstaff, that would be reaching out to the Nels group, and then for the community at large, it's nice to see people show support. So something like that protest, or people to actually be vocal rather than indifferent to express support.
Yeah.
And then lastly, just spend time with your community. And you may find out that you are interacting with an immigrant, or make a choice to go spend time with those people to understand how life may be more similar than different.
Yeah. Because when my brother got deported, a lot of people said that they didn't even know he was undocumented.
Mm-hmm. Well, we appreciate so much the time that you've been willing to spend with us here today and to share such personal details, but I think such profoundly important details to convey how difficult it is to go through life, and then to have the added complexities of something like immigration status creating more stressors. So thank you so much for spending time.
Thank you, and thank you for caring about this topic. It's really important. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining us and hearing about the lived experience of our guest today.
Our impression is that this person and her family demonstrated and continue to demonstrate a remarkable resilience as they continue to maneuver through the legal process and seeking documented status.
Tune in next week for our next episode from Echoes from the Edge, Voices on the Margin, as we conduct another anonymous interview to highlight the lived experiences of people in the Flagstaff region.